social media. About life.
So we now link now.
For phone.
Because me, you know, this is usually screen or channel. So we are going to pick the link from the channel. And we'll share it on social media. So what do you want?
Go to YouTube.
YouTube.
Links the TV.
Okay.
One of the things I don't think we have done well in our democracy architecture is the administrative part of it.
And if you ask me, how can we strengthen our democracy, it's accountability.
If the citizens find value in it, then they will believe in it.
How can Ghana contribute meaningfully to regional democratic resilience?
When people like you and I are willing to engage with one another, exchange ideas, and build consensus around shared vision. Now that is the goal NANSA seeks to play.
How we design policies, how we implement them, how we evaluate them, and bring them back to even say, where do we do course correction?
I mean, the Sierra Leone was led by young people who felt marginalized, who felt that the government was led by elites who were lopping them off and taking them from their lives.
Democracy is also backsliding. If you look at what is happening in the world, trust in government is falling. It's the same thing that we have in Ghana.
If the group decides to go with the request from the senior citizens, is it not democracy?
When we talk about unemployment, but if you go to business, they lack labor. People are employed, they get their first paycheck, they are gone.
We are national for greatness, but we can only get it when we have for this kind of conversation. Let's be faithful to ourselves. Let's be honest with ourselves. Let's drive the change. We can do it. We have to do it, if not for us, for our children.
One of the things I don't think we have done well in our democracy architecture is the administrative part of it.
And if you ask me, how can we strengthen our democracy, it's accountability.
If the citizens find value in it, then they will believe in it.
How can Ghana contribute meaningfully to regional democratic resilience?
When people like you and I are willing to engage with one another, exchange ideas, and build consensus around shared vision. Now that is the role NANSA Institute seeks to play.
How we design policies, how we implement them, how we evaluate them, and bring them back to even say, where do we do course correction?
I mean, the Sierra Leone was led by young people who felt marginalized, who felt that the government was led by elites who were robbing them of the dividends of their salary.
Democracy is also backsliding. If you look at what is happening in the world, trust in government is falling. It's the same thing that we have in Ghana.
If the group decides to go with the request of these senior citizens, is it going to help our democracy?
When we talk about unemployment, but if you go to business, they lack labor. People are employed, they get their first paycheck, they are gone.
We are national for greatness, but we can only get it when we have for this kind of conversation. Let's be faithful to ourselves. Let's be honest with ourselves. Let's drive the change. We can do it. We have to do it, if not for us, for our children.
One of the things I don't think we have done well in our democracy architecture is the administrative part of it.
And if you ask me, how can we strengthen our democracy, it's accountability.
If the citizens find value in it, then they will believe in it.
How can Ghana contribute meaningfully to regional democratic resilience.
When people like you and I are ready to engage with one another, exchange ideas, and build consensus around shared vision. Now that is the role National Institute seeks to play.
How we design policies, how we implement them, how we evaluate them, and bring them back to even say, where do we do course correction?
I mean, the Sierra Leone was led by young people who felt marginalized, who felt that the government was led by citizens who were robbing them of the dividends of their time.
Democracy is also backsliding. If you look at what is happening in the world, trust in government is falling. It's the same thing that we have in Ghana.
If Supreme Court decides to go with the request of this senior citizens, is it going to help our democracy?
When we talk about unemployment, but if you go to business, they lack labor. People are employed, they get their first paycheck, they are gone.
We are additional for reasons, but we can only get the friendly output of this kind of conversations. Let's be truthful to ourselves. Let's be honest with ourselves. Let's drive the change. We can do it. We have to do it, if not for us, for our children.
One of the things I don't think we have done well in our democracy architecture is the administrative part of it.
And if you ask me, how can we strengthen our democracy, it's accountability.
If the citizens find value in it, then they will believe in it.
How can Ghana contribute meaningfully to regional democratic resilience?
When people like you and I are ready to engage with one another, exchange ideas, and build consensus around shared vision. Now that is the role National Institute seeks to play.
How we design policies, how we implement them, how we evaluate them, and bring them back to even say, where do we do course correction?
I mean, the Sierra Leone was led by young people who felt marginalized, who felt that the government was led by citizens who were robbing them of the dividends of their time.
Democracy is also backsliding. If you look at what is happening in the world, trust in government is falling. It's the same thing that we have in Ghana.
If Supreme Court decides to go with the request of this senior citizens, is it going to help our democracy?
When we talk about unemployment, but if you go to business, they lack labor. People are employed, they get their first paycheck, they are gone.
We are additional for reasons, but we can only get the friendly output of this kind of conversations. Let's be truthful to ourselves. Let's be honest with ourselves. Let's drive the change. We can do it. We have to do it, if not for us, for our children.
So good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to welcome you to the third Nyansa Dialogue series. My name is Mami Pia Amwanchu. I'll be your moderator for this evening. So on behalf of Nyansa Institute, it's such a pleasure, huge pleasure to have you join us this evening. Thank you so much for deciding to spend your time with us. So we'll start right away. We don't want to keep you, it's a Friday night, so we don't want to keep you here very long time. So tonight we are turning our attention to something that's happening in West Africa that really demands conversation, but also insights and a deeper understanding of what's happening. And that's in the sense of the instability in the Sahel and what it means for Ghana. So I guess we're all here with a very simple question. And that's what we had blasted across all our social media promo, which is with growing instability across the Sahel, how can Ghana help? That is the question we are coming to have a dialogue on this evening. And it sounds like a very simple question, but I can assure you there's so much to digest, so much to think about. So we'll just go straight into it. We're very fortunate to have our Executive Director for Nyansa Institute in the name of Sahel, who will be giving us a very quick opening remarks, and then right from there we'll hear from our speaker, distinguished speaker, and I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting presentation from him. So Sahel, please, we're ready for you. A round of applause, please.
Thank you, Mami. Good evening. Seems like I'm talking to myself. See, forget about the numbers. Every good thing starts small. All right. Good evening, distinguished guests, friends of Nyansa Institute, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Nyansa Institute for Strategic Dialogue, indeed, it is my pleasure to welcome you to our third dialogue series. Our theme this evening is both timely and it is urgent. With growing instability across the Sahel, how can Ghana help? I believe it's about time we rise up to the occasion. For many years, the deteriorating security situation in the Sahel could appear distant from Ghana, but today the assumption is increasingly difficult to sustain. The expansion of violent extremism, political instability, illicit trafficking, displacement, and the weakening of state authority across parts of the Sahel is reshaping the security environment of the entire West African region. For us here in Ghana, it has remained relatively a stable democracy with us. However, we seem to find ourselves in a very fragile neighborhood. I must say, stability should never be mistaken for immunity. The question before us tonight is therefore not simply whether instability in the Sahel can reach Ghana. It is whether Ghana is sufficiently prepared for the changing nature of the threats, and whether we are exercising the leadership required to help prevent a wider regional crisis. This is not solely a military or security question. It is also about governance, economic opportunity, border communities, intelligence, diplomacy, regional cooperation, and public trust. Indeed, extremism often exploits spaces where the state is weak, where young people are few, where young people see few opportunities available for them, and where communities feel disconnected from the institutions. I believe our response must therefore be equally comprehensive. At Nyansa, we believe Ghana must move from awareness to preparedness, from preparedness to prevention, and from prevention to regional leadership. Now, this requires a difficult conversation, and that's what we are here to have tonight. Are our northern communities sufficiently resilient? Are our security institutions adequately equipped and coordinated? Is intelligence being shared effectively across our borders? Indeed, what role should Ghana play within the ECOWAS with respect to what is happening on the coastline and the Alliance of Sahel States? These are not questions for government alone. They require engagement among policymakers, security professionals, traditional and community leaders, researchers, civil society, the private sector, myself included, the media, and each and every citizen. And now this is precisely why Nyansa Institute exists. We seek to create a space where important national and regional questions can be examined seriously, openly, and constructively, and where dialogue ultimately contributes to better policy and decisive action. Now this evening, we are privileged to have a distinguished speaker who brings different perspectives to this important conversation. I encourage us all to have a move beyond describing just the threats. Let us examine what Ghana must do, what must change, and what leadership from Ghana should look like at this critical moment for West Africa. The Sahel crisis is a warning. Ghana still has an opportunity to strengthen its resilience and help shape the regional response. But make no mistake, this opportunity should not be taken for granted. The time to prepare is not when the threat arrives at our doorstep. The time to lead is now. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the third Nyansa Institute Dialogue. Thank you, and I look forward to a thoughtful and consequential discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was our Executive Director for Nyansa Institute. And one of the things he said that really struck me is that as a country, we shouldn't take our stability for granted. We shouldn't take it to be immunity. Stability should not be taken for immunity, meaning that it's very imperative that we discuss this topic. And so this evening we have a very knowledgeable speaker to do that. But remember that this is not just a lecture, this is a dialogue. So we're going to benefit from his insights, we're going to benefit from his experience, but I also want you to critically listen to what he has to share with us, and then please write down your questions. Don't assume that when we get to the Q&A session, you remember it all, because he's going to share very amazing things with us. So that's why we have the writing pass for you. Please write down your questions so that when we get to the session where we get to interact with him, we can ask our questions. So just a brief about our speaker before he takes over. Mr. Mutaru Umuni Mukhtar, is the Executive Director of the West Africa Center for Counter Extremism, WASI, and that's an organization working across West Africa on preventing violent extremism, understanding its drivers, and strengthening resilience within communities. His work has focused extensively on radicalization, violent extremism, conflict prevention, and regional security, with particular attention to the community level factors that can create vulnerabilities to extremism. WASI also reports having worked with thousands of young people and community representatives to build resilience against conflicts. He's also been a very strong voice on Ghana's exposure to the changing security environment in the Sahel and the implications for Ghana's northern communities and borders. So we're very pleased to have someone with both research but practical experience leading tonight's conversation. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our speaker, Mr. Mutaru.
Good evening to everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the Nyansa Institute for deeming me fit enough to lead this conversation today. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be part of your dialogue series. I like to be very efficient with times, so I'll proceed on the topic. This topic is so important at a time that we're dealing with serious regional crisis. As you will notice, those of us who are familiar with security know that we're encircled by insecurity in ways that we have never seen before. So I'd like to set the scene or set the stage for the conversation in the next half an hour. Less than 15 years ago, only 3 countries in West Africa were dealing with violent extremism. Terrorism reached its peak in 2014, 2015, with about 7,200 fatalities with just 3 countries in West Africa. Today we're seeing the threat descend towards coastal states, and that includes Ghana and its eastern and western neighbors. Today we're talking about 50% of all West African countries dealing with violent extremism. And it's characterized by what we call the spillover phenomenon, where the threats cut across borders in what we call the tri-border regions. And it's also characterized by increased intensity, complexity, as well as geographical spread. So it's not just a linear spread. The region's security has been worsened by the political instability. We're seeing coups happen in unprecedented fashion in terms of numbers and in terms of character. We're seeing pervasive local conflicts that characterize insecurity in this region. I'll take a step back to give you a very clearer picture, because I want to use this opportunity not just to talk about what Ghana can do, but provide opportunity for us to get enhanced understanding of what it is that we're looking at in terms of security. So I want to tell you a story, a short story, that captures a decade of growing terrorist violence and insecurity in West Africa. In 2013, this was the picture of West Africa, and I wish the map had all the lines clearly shown here. On my screen, it does. It shows the specific countries. And you would see that none of the countries in coastal West Africa had any attacks, apart from Nigeria in 2013. The same happens or carries through 2014, 2015, and 2016. Something changed. For the first time in coastal West Africa, or among our neighbors, Burkina Faso had its first mainland attack. Then we had Grand Bassam, we had Côte d'Ivoire have its first attack in 2016. That was when a lot of us, or Ghanaians, began to feel that this could be a direct threat to us. When you travel through this journey, you will see that the threats began to expand in terms of intensity. Observe the pattern in terms of the numbers. The attacks, the red ones represent attacks by Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb and Jenim affiliates. The blue one represents ISIS in the Greater Sahara and its affiliates. And you see the green on your right-hand side by Boko Haram and its affiliates. If you get to 2026, you will see a huge difference. So if you compare this to what you saw in 2013, it tells you that this threat didn't just pop up. This is something that has been with us for more than a decade. And yet, we have not succeeded in containing it. As we speak, the Sahel accounts for about 3,885 terrorism deaths in 2025, compared to 1% in 2007, which means that in 2007, the entire West Africa accounted for only 1% of global terrorism fatalities. Today, nearly 50% of the entire global terrorism fatalities. You can see in the map here, 6 of the top 10 countries most affected by terrorism are in sub-Saharan Africa. According to the Global Terrorism Index, even though the fatality numbers that we're dealing with have fallen, sub-Saharan Africa remains the epicenter of global terrorism, with the Sahel accounting for nearly 4,000 fatalities last year. The insecurity in West Africa is not only characterized by extremist violence. We're seeing a contagion of coups. Coup d'etats happened in a fashion we have never seen before since the formation of ECOWAS in '75. As you can see here, in less than 6 years, West Africa experienced more than 11 coups and attempted coups. Today, a third of all ECOWAS countries are under military leadership. And we see linkages in terms of this pattern of insecurity or threats. The overwhelming terrorist violence we're seeing created opportunities for coups. Those of us who will be following, nearly all the coup leaders, probably except Doumbouya of Guinea, reference the inability of their predecessors to contain terrorism as a justification for the coups that they undertook. So there's that strong linkage. The inability to deal with terrorism has eventuated in coup d'etats in many of the countries. And that did not stop there. It led to the disintegration of ECOWAS. Not only did they undertake the coups, they chose to move away or walk away from ECOWAS by describing ECOWAS as a body that has been incapable of taking control of regional security. We're seeing unprecedented number of coups within 2 years and the withdrawal of these countries from ECOWAS. What explains this phenomenon that we are looking at? What is happening in West Africa is not an accident. In sub-Saharan Africa, 71% of the recruits, they cited human rights abuses by state security forces as a reason for joining extremist groups. A quarter of those individuals cited job opportunities and other vulnerabilities as factors that make them vulnerable to recruitment. I have argued for several years there are several factors accounting for the instability we have in West Africa when it comes to terrorism. But my central point or argument is that what we're seeing in West Africa is a manifestation of the frustrations and anguish of young people, vulnerable youth, who have lost faith in their country's capacity to provide them what I call the entitlements of citizenship, jobs and job opportunities. Opportunities for young people to live out their dreams, to pursue their dreams. Our African countries are incapable, have proven incapable of providing the foundation that allows young people to succeed in the pursuit of their dreams. Technology, including social media, has helped amplify the dreams or aspirations of young people. And I call that exaggerated expectations and dreams of young people. Exaggerated because their countries or their leaders are incapable of providing the foundation that allows them to pursue or succeed with those dreams. So it leads to frustration. And that frustration leads them to engage in acts like cyber crimes, terrorism, kidnapping, and all kinds of vices that amplify our vulnerabilities. You see that young people are looking for meaning, they are looking for relevance, they are looking for attention, they are looking for popularity, visibility, and sometimes fame. And once they do not have legitimate means to achieve this, they can resort to things that lead to these factors. But if you want to stay within civil society terminologies or framework, we will cite things like governance deficits. Governance deficits across the entire West Africa. If you have been to 2 West African nations, you have good reason to conclude that you know the entire West Africa, because we have similar vulnerabilities. We have dysfunctional institutions that do not respond in terms of the basis or the goals for their establishment. Youth vulnerabilities, and they are pervasive. We're seeing proliferation of small arms and light weapons. Even in our own country, that hasn't had terrorist attacks internally. We're seeing marginalization along ethnic lines and inequality in entire West Africa as part of the drivers for recruitment. In fact, in the northern parts of the country, we've seen people go to join terrorist groups citing marginalization and discrimination against their ethnic group. We have pervasive local conflicts. Across the entire West Africa, every country has these factors. This factor in terms of conflicts. And if you look at the Global Terrorism Index, and I'm trying to link the existence of unresolved conflicts to violent extremism, the data shows that more than 93% of all countries that are dealing with violent extremism, it happens in the context where there are unresolved conflicts. And so if you have conflicts that will be fearful of Boko, it creates a vulnerability for recruitment and for attacks. We have climate change and the dynamics around climate change and resource scarcity. The vegetation shapes a lot of economic activities and engagement. Pastoralists are always moving, depending on the vegetation, and they clash with farming populations and local populations. It leads to violence, it leads to insecurity, and complex forms of dynamics that fuel terrorism. This has had a huge impact in many ways, and I'd like to look at the economic impact, the implications of having this sort of threat on our soil. Instability and foreign direct investment, they have an inverse relationship. The more unstable your space is, the less you attract foreign direct investment. Nobody wants to invest in a climate of insecurity. It increases our risk profile and renders our domestic economy very risky and unattractive to investors. We engage, for example, the Ghana Investment Promotion Authority, and they cite some of the reasons investors are not comfortable citing factories or businesses in Northern Ghana due to the insecurity in the Sahel, due to the media reportage relating to insecurity in Northern Ghana. So there's a very direct relationship. The insecurity attracts negative media and international coverage, undermines investment climate, and reduces the flow of foreign direct investment. It shortens policymakers' horizon. You can't project further into the future due to the inconsistency and the uncertainty surrounding insecurity or security of your country. You are only able to make short-term or temporary projections and analysis, and that hurts our economies. And without our economy growing, we'll still suffer, or we'll suffer more in dealing with vulnerabilities, especially around young people. What has been our general responses in terms of ECOWAS to this insecurity? It's a combination of what we call the kinetic approach and non-kinetic approach. Militarized or securitized approach and non-militarized approach. But I want to summarize this by saying that we have failed in the Sahel. And we have failed in the Sahel because of our securitization or militarization of our response to terrorism. If you're familiar with what has happened in the Sahel in the last decade, you would know that we have acted directly and indirectly in terms of failing to contain the threat. Our measures are accountable for the losses and the failure in the Sahel. MINUSMA, this is a UN mission deployed in Mali to contain the threat in the Sahel. MINUSMA has over 15,000 forces. Operation Barkhane is a force deployed by the French, over 5,000 forces. Africa Command by the US, over 1,000 forces. G5 Sahel forces, over 5,000 of them. This is a group of 5 African countries. And we have special operations task forces, one called Operation Takuba, over 500 of them, and multinational joint task forces under the Chad Basin Commission. And then we have Accra Initiative. You see these numbers, it tells you that we were over-concentrated on the militarized approach to it. What was the effect? It led to human rights violations, counterproductive outcomes. In fact, this mission, the MINUSMA, is the deadliest UN mission in history, only second to Lebanon. If you're there to fight a war, if you're there to contain a threat and you're there to fight a war, you get a different outcome. And that's why we have failed to deal with the threat in the Sahel. And there must be lessons to be learned in terms of dealing with the threat. The overbearing security measures with extrajudicial killings, they draw public distrust, support and further radicalize young people who are seeking revenge. If you read a lot of literature and feel the experiences, you see local communities actually having more support and goodwill for terrorist groups than they do for state actors. They will exert information to terrorist groups in the event of state-planned operations. Also, the congested security allows for restricted space for civil society work and development initiatives. Because the approach focuses a lot more on security measures to the detriment of development interventions. And that allowed for frustrations and building goodwill rather for extremist groups. That kind of approach also created challenges of coordination, competition for visibility and funding. Competition for visibility because all these initiatives were from different partners that were seeking to prove to the world that they were rescuing an African region, looking for rescue. And they were looking on competing for funding as well. It was characterized by impunity and extrajudicial killings. The approach also allowed for disproportionate focus on military measures to the neglect of non-security measures with counterproductive outcomes. We have also seen, in terms of the challenges that led to this, we're looking at corruption and bad governance. The coup-ridden nations, nearly all the coup situations we saw cited corruption and bad governance as a reason, as part of the reasons for the coup. Today, many are questioning in West Africa. Many are questioning democracy and its capacity to deliver. Its capacity to deliver to the people. And this is very pervasive, not just Ghana. Young people are questioning whether democracy is really delivering or is really the right choice for us. And that's why coup leaders have become very popular. If you remember, at the inauguration of our current president, the leader of Burkina Faso, was here as a guest. All leaders who showed up, none of them received the kind of applause that he received. In fact, maybe the president felt threatened, I don't know. Because he has had cause to cite it. He has referenced it before, after he became president, warning that our democracy is declining, and if it continues to do so, young people will look elsewhere for a different type of leadership. And he cited the case of Burkina Faso, Burkinabe leader at his inauguration. And let's be very frank, what is the reality in terms of democracy within this space? Democracy has promised so many things. But what I can tell is that democracy does not guarantee development or prosperity. If the focus of leadership is on power and not the people. Here in our country, the reality is that there's a lot more focus on power and not the people. And it's a sign that democracy is veering away from its mandate in terms of delivering to the people. And the other lesson is that we have seen, not just in recent coups, but throughout our colonial, post-colonial history, that the alternative to bad civilian government is not military rule, it's not a coup d'etat, it is better civilian government. It is a product of deliberate and calculated national effort at training new generation of ethical and responsible leaders and citizens. Followers who are good followers and leaders who are good leaders. So we all are collectively responsible for our fate. What can Ghana do in this respect? Ghana has a lot to do. Already Ghana has shown example. We have built a 40-year democracy, a stable nation that serves as an example, even if it's to a limited extent, in terms of dealing with the entitlements of citizenship, taking control of our security. And when it comes to the specific nature and specific threat of terrorism, Ghana has designed a national security strategy document for the first time in our history to deal with the challenges of security in Ghana and beyond. We have designed a national framework for preventing and countering violent extremism as a sole initiative to tackle terrorism and violent extremism. Ghana has designed programs in partnership with its neighbors for joint counter-terrorism operations among its neighbors in the South region. And Ghana pioneered an initiative away from militarized approach called the Accra Initiative. Those of us who are familiar may have read about Accra Initiative. It was designed to prevent the spillover of terrorism onto coastal states without using military might, through intelligence sharing and coordination among partners. If you notice, the Alliance of Sahelian States have had a very fractured relationship with not just ECOWAS, but coastal states, individual states. And so Ghana as a nation, when the current government took charge, realizing the fractured relationship, it undermines intelligence sharing. If you have a poor relationship with your neighbor, nobody will be willing to share information with you. They will not coordinate or collaborate with you in terms of security operations. So the government did the right thing by appointing a special envoy to the Sahel. And so there's the Office of Special Envoy to the Sahel. And the office is meant to build the broken diplomatic ties between Ghana and its military-led Sahel nations, the Alliance of Sahelian States. The office is to serve as a vessel for cooperation between the bloc and ECOWAS. If you notice how difficult the relationship has been between ECOWAS and the Alliance, this is an innovative and smart approach to bridging the gap for cooperation. The Alliance of Sahelian States, they may never come back to ECOWAS, but it does not prevent ECOWAS from collaborating or coordinating with the mechanism that is trustful to both parties. This has helped to improve intelligence sharing and joint responses to the threat. If you were following, you would see that in the last year and a half, we've seen improved relations between Ghana and Burkina Faso in particular, including the other nations of the alliance. Ghana has built a capacity and a foundation that allows it to take a leadership role in terms of addressing the friction and fractures at the regional level. And the good thing is Ghana is already on that path. The Accra initiative, of course, for some people has become dysfunctional now. But there's a consensus now to restructure a new mechanism called the Gulf of Guinea Sahel Initiative. That has the buy-in of all the groups within the Sahel. And that becomes a cooperative mechanism between the alliance of Sahelian states and ECOWAS. And as we speak now, it's in process and it's being worked on. And we'll be hopeful that it would serve the purpose it's intended to serve. I want to make a few conclusions here as I run out of time. Experiences on the field in the Sahel shows that extremist groups understand the youth better than the state. They understand the vulnerabilities of young people. They understand the aspirations of young people. And they understand the needs of young people better than the state. In the Chad Basin area, a terrorist group gives a young guy a motorbike, $250, and a gun. He has a dedicated follower. Our politicians are not tooled to understand young people. They are tooled to exploit young people. Whilst many initiatives exist throughout the region for unemployment, none of the states in West Africa has been able to formulate a robust intervention that is robust enough and capable of adequately addressing youth unemployment. In Ghana here, we've seen a lot of situations of recruitment that has created stampede, leading to fatalities. And this is just a small fraction of people who are jobless. We've seen similar scenes in Nigeria. We've seen similar scenes in Mali. We've seen similar scenes in Cote d'Ivoire. We have shown that we are not tooled to address the vulnerabilities of young people. In fact, there's a report by the UNDP, Beyond the Multi-Dimensional Poverty, that projects that we are becoming worse. The economic conditions of young people are becoming worse. The report also says that the states in West Africa are not designed to support young people, that they are in the way of young people. It means that what they do serve as stumbling blocks for young people's achievement. We must never allow conditions that make coups possible in Africa. And this can only happen by doing more for our people, serving the citizens, not ourselves, and preparing politicians adequately for true ethical and responsible leadership. I want to add that we cannot fight terrorism with militarized approach alone. The battle against terrorism, the fight against terrorism, cannot be won on the battlefield. It won in the mindset, in addressing the local conditions in our communities and factors that lead people to become radicalized, to engage in extremism. Throughout our engagement in the last 11 years as an organization, governance deficits and dysfunctional institutions remain one of the biggest sources of grievances. As I want to document this and share this with you, how important it is to retool our institutions to ensure that they are responsive and that leadership delivers what it's intended to do. The problem is the government. The problem is the government. and the solution is the government. But whoever provides the solution is our government. This is a young guy within an extremist group in the Sahel. And I would like to ponder on this and mirror that in our reality, what it means to vulnerable young people who are just seeking to engage in society. The security of the people and their livelihoods shall be the highest law of the land. This is by a philosopher called Marcus Cicero. He talks about the state and the people, and he concludes that the security of the people and their livelihoods shall be the highest law of the land. So human security is national security. Without security of the people, there is no national security. And no nation can be sustained without the focus on the needs of the people. And we need to learn lessons from this. So I'd like to end here and thank all of you for listening.
Please, another round of applause. I think if we had asked for everybody better, is that Muni has given us the reality of instability across the Sahel, and I think that was a very great presentation. And I hope that we've learned something from it. I was so uneducated about the issue of instability across the Sahel and what it means for Ghana, but listening to a very knowledgeable speaker, I'm so educated, and there were so many alarms ringing in my head when he was sharing those amazing insights with us. So please, one more round of applause for our speaker. And I think now we've gone into another important aspect of our program tonight, which is where we engage with what we've learned or what we've heard about this evening. And I'm hoping, because I was looking across faces to see how we were resonating with Mr. Umuni's presentation. And I'm hoping that we have some interesting questions for him. It's not just a matter of us agreeing with what he shared with us. Please, let's push the thinking. Let's challenge some of the issues he's raised with us. We have some great ideas. I'm very sure he's more than willing to listen to them so that we all ask ourselves the important question: where are we on the instability and what can Ghana do? Ghana in the sense that it's you and I who make up Ghana. So at this point, it's time for us to interact with our speaker. We've heard the insights. He started by telling us, by giving us the frame of what is going on, the instability, the number of coups we've had in the last 6 years, which is unprecedented, the drivers, facilitating these coups and instability across the Sahel, the economic impact of these instability issues. He also gave us Ghana's framework, what Ghana is doing with regards to instability. But I'm sure we have some pressing questions. So we have the microphones around. We'll do this in a very diplomatic way. If you have a question, you kindly raise your hand. The mics come to you. You introduce yourself, and then you quickly ask a question, because we want to hear as many voices as possible. So at this point, we're ready for your questions. And we'll start. Jessica, there's a mic like this. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is I'm Abdul Rashid Bambu. You can say Dr. Abdul Rashid Bambu. I must actually applaud the organizers of this event. I got the information at the 11th hour by the executive secretary himself earlier this morning, and the team really captured my attention, and I know what he can actually do. So I wanted to actually come around to get his perspective. So mine is more or less not a question, but a contribution, and if possible, some elements of criticism. I don't know if I have the floor. Thank you so much. I applaud the organizers of the event, and I think that this event shouldn't have been organized in this manner. It is bigger than we thought of it to be. I was thinking it could have had a national dimension, a very bigger platform where key security actors or consumers of intelligence themselves could actually hear some of these things that we are about to discuss. Looking at the presentation, I'm sure the weight of it outweighs those of us, the number of us in this particular room. So I applaud that. So I'm sure that moving forward, you would actually target a nationwide bigger platform so that the voices could go wider. If I would issue of violence extremism in West Africa and in the Sahel region, he's a scholar, he's an authority when it comes to that because he has been actually working around the subject matter. I am a researcher, an interdisciplinary researcher in media communication and security. And largely my expertise covers issues of security communication. And the Sahel region is currently on my desk, where I'm working on to actually determine how information disorder disrupts national securities. And today he has given me more than necessary to go forward. Thank you so much for this particular update. But then domestically, the question is what is Ghana going to do about this? So it means that we are not looking at what has happened to other countries, but we are looking at what is it that we think could happen to Ghana as far as those elements over there are concerned. I appreciate all the references made in terms of case studies, but there's a portion that actually confirmed our executive director when he made the opening statement that Ghana is not immune. If you go to the northern part of Ghana, as part of my data collections, Ghana is already being affected by this violent extremism. In Togo, the northern part of Togo has always been affected. But because the news media doesn't cover some of these split outs, we are not able to hear much about it. In 2017, terrorists attacked Togo, the northern part of Togo, and have to actually force communities within Togo to split over to Ghana. In 2018, similar incident happened. In 2021-2022 stretch, there was terror attack within the northern part of Togo, and that actually brought more security incidents within the northern part of the country. But because it's not been covered by the news media, much of it has not been heard. And today, I'm glad that you have actually awakened us more on that. So the media reportage aspect that you mentioned actually covered that aspect, and I was so interested to hear more from that particular aspect. The concern of over-militarization and secularization is true. But then, within the Ghanaian community, our biggest challenge is not only what we witness as an act of terrorism elsewhere that threatens us and that makes us feel like we are not safe. Our biggest challenge is internal. And largely, it is more about how we manage our internal security and also something we all underrate, media information disorder. Fake news, deep fakes, talk about any form of distortion that actually goes on in our traditional media and that of the social media platforms. They are preparing grounds for some of these things. Look, security actors are many. If I may, because he's an expert when it comes to security, so sometimes in authority we need to seek consent. We are divided into several stages. Those actors who have the mandate to use force and those actors who does not have the mandate to use force. And those who have the mandate to use force are the state government institutions, military, police, and other stuff. Then those who don't have the mandate to use force are people like us and ordinary citizens, civil society organizations, among others. Today, you see that certain things are happening in Ghana, and those who don't have the mandate to use force are using brutal force, sometimes even on camera, and yet nothing happens to whoever exercises such powers. It's a threat, but we are underrating it. So for us to do something, we have to start from that angle. One, by looking at strategizing how security actors can work, can act within the frames of law. And when they breaches it, how the law would actually bring them back to order. And that can actually help. Then there was another sensitive place that the executive director touched on, and that was issue on interstate agency collaboration. You see, if we don't actually work internally to strengthen our national security architecture, then we cannot have interstate collaboration. It's not possible. Because even within your internal systems, you can't trust each other to share intelligence. How much more would an external person trust your system, or you even trusted the internal system to share intelligence? For what? Within Ghana, we have that challenge of interstate agency collaboration. In recent times, we've heard it in the news media, the police and the military altercations, and other security agencies like the IOCO, and then the Narcotic Control Board, and some other agencies fighting over a case as to who owns the power to that. You see the problem? Then again, issue of sharing intelligence. The director knows what I'm talking about. There is no law in this country that actually states and directs state agencies to share intelligence. No force of law. From one agency to the other will seek information. If they so wish to give you, they will. But if they decide not to, you have no power elsewhere to rely on to force them to provide you with the intelligence. How then can we actually help with this issue? So for us to actually start working on this, these are some of the places that I'm sure that we can actually work on. In fact, my long talks is in buttress of what the presenter has made. In fact, the lecture, as I mentioned earlier on, is so deep that we can't even have enough time to actually digest all of that. Issue of democracy. Huge one, a very huge one. In fact, as a scholar and someone who has greater experience in media, I've always argued that I don't trust in media freedom or press freedom. And I have reasons to this. In the Gambia, for example, when I was lecturing in the University of the Gambia, they had issues of their constitution. And when they finally came out with a consideration of removals, what they describe as draconian law in terms of media freedom, they were emulated. And I was telling them, you are emulating. Ask your big brother Ghana. When the repeal of the criminal libel law was changed, or repealed, what happened to them today? Do you think that we still have the decency Ghanaians used to have in this country? No, because we believe that there's now freedom, and that freedom is in line with democracy, which we wrongly or we misunderstood. That's the point I'm driving at. Now, the danger of democracy, as he stated earlier on, one of them is that people, you have to actually give people the democracy before you teach them what it is, and then to move to the next stage of teaching them how to use it. You see how dangerous and delicate that is? Because you have to give it out. It's democracy, you have it, before we teach you how to use it. I'm sure your guess is as well as mine. And that is where our challenge is. Today, in our media states, look at what is happening. People in the name of democracy come out, do things or say things that actually breaches or infringes upon the rights of others, and even, at the deterrence of national security. And yet, we still have challenges with that. The issue of the people and the leadership, yes, it's true. That has been the biggest challenge elsewhere. Now, all this I'm saying is that for us to actually help, we will have to start internally dealing with these issues before we can actually think of what else to do when it comes to our contribution. And on that note, I'm sure I'm not the only one here. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I feel like that was a mini lecture on its own, but you raised some very interesting issues. For instance, the thing about sharing information across agencies. And I thought that was what the right to information was supposed to address. You know, Doctor, I thought that was what the right to information bill was supposed to address, so that we're able to share information amongst agencies easily. But clearly it is that it's not working. So we really have a deeper internal issue, as you put it.
And if I may, even the right to the information bill itself has its own flaws.
Can I imagine?
Who is asking for the information? For what purpose? And have anyone ever gotten it per the law? They will tell you to provide you with the information, but will you get it? Because it's a sham by itself. This gentleman has worked with international organizations, including embassies and states, as you are seeing here. So some of these things that I say, he understands them. That a state or another state cannot survive with whatever he or she, whatever it wants to do with you until it has some level of intelligence that it's looking for with regards to whatever it's going to do. Now, what thought does he have about your state before it is getting that information? So as soon as he gets that information, then it becomes another issue for the country. And so that's a very big issue. I think we need to look at it. This is the reason why I think the platform should have been a bigger one.
Right, I'm taking that point very well. So we'll pass on the mic. See some few hands up. Yes. So Ransford, you have the mic. You take it, and then we'll come back to the man in the suit, and then next the speaker. Yes. We have about 35 minutes. So.
Hello. All right. Thank you very much for the lecture. I was quite late, but I was able to catch quite a few. I have 3 questions. My name is Ransford Broby. I have 3 questions. I've written it down so that I will be able to read and then not talk so much. Now, the first question is that, do you think that a joint ECOWAS democratic restoration in Niger, that was when the Niger coup happened, right, could have sent a strong signal that it still has control over the Sahel region? That's my first question. Now, my second question is that if you meet Dr. Sekopon, he will tell you that Ghanaians have already made their peace with democracy. And so, if you look at the Afrobarometer, those who actually prefer democratic governance to other forms of government is very high. Now, with Ghanaians having made their peace with democracy, how different is the Ghanaian governance landscape, from the Sahel? And what are the tension points in Ghana that, if not managed, can cause internal breakdown and insecurity? My third question has to do with a publication that's... Let's take my time. Okay.
The question is so cumbersome, so we have to take it. So, move back to the second question, please.
So the second question is that Ghanaians have made their peace with democracy. And by saying that Ghanaians have made their peace with democracy, what I'm trying to say is that if you ask the Ghanaian what other forms of government or what forms of government he prefers, he would likely tell you that I want democracy. Even though our democracy has some minor problems, right? Yes. But they would prefer democracy to any other form of government. Now, with this, how different do you think the Ghanaian governance landscape is compared to our Sahelian neighbors? And what do you think are the tension points in Ghana that, if not managed, can cause a breakdown in our security architecture? Then the third question has to do with a report that I read by Professor Ndongo Sahel. I don't know whether you've heard about him in Senegal, a Senegalese professor. Right. Now, he analyzed the nexus between democratic governance and economic justice in Africa. And for him, he fought liberal democracy. That is not the best approach to governance in Africa. And instead proposes what he calls substantive democracy, where, amongst other things, says that there should be increasing national control over economic resources. That is what I want us to focus on. Okay. But then in our African economies, what we normally see is that whenever we talk about government control of economic resources, it's usually what Professor Kwesi Prempeh will tell you, that it is socialized cost with private benefits. And so the cost is shared by everybody in the society, but then the benefit goes to private individuals. Okay. Do you think that if we should do away with liberal democracy, security will be restored and there is going to be economic development in sub-Saharan Africa? These are my 3 questions. Thank you.
So, Mr. Speaker, would you like to take these 2 questions?
It's not a question.
The answers, and then we'll go for another set of questions. Yes.
Hello. I am Ambassador Francis Obuzukobi. I represented the new Kenya farmers. A print media that gave visibility to agriculture and socio-economic development. I have a question and contribution. Please, when you were about to conclude, you quoted a young man saying the government is the problem, the government is the solution. I want to ask that if government is going to provide solutions, they are either stakeholders, that we have government agencies, ministries, parliament, financial institutions. How can these stakeholders help the government solve the problem? On the solution side, you also spoke about economics and security of the people. My contribution will be based on economic security. Apart from my media, I'm also a youth leader and also a business person. And I want to contribute based on the statement you made that a hungry man is an angry man. I live in Amahia. Amahia is on the other side of the world. I did one observation when the young guys were given the opportunity to do this Okada. Before they started, most of these young guys were in the house, maybe after school, or those who didn't go to school. What I've realized in my community is that community theft has reduced, because most of these young guys are the strong guys who were in the house, who were not doing it. In Amahia, most of the Okada guys do 24-hour motor. So when I'm outside, I don't fear, because if I get to Amahia 1 a.m., I will still get these guys sitting by the roadside. You take them to their houses. They have become economically occupied. Therefore, they don't have time for, somewhere there's a fight here. Then those crews, they divide themselves. Kwesi Buwati and his team has a fight with Yadako and his team, because most of the time these guys are occupied. So what I'm suggesting is that if we are talking about security, we should also concentrate on economic security, especially for young people. When you occupy them, they don't have the time to go and fight. They don't have the time to form these groups where they have a fight with this. I live in Kumasi, we have groups, and I told you have their group, this place, they will have their groups, and sometimes they meet unnecessarily just to fight and show their manship and visibility. So I suggest that if anybody is fighting insecurity, their concentration should also be economic security for young people, providing them with resources. Most of the time they are youth events, they say empowerment, youth empowerment. You go and you only talk youth motivation, but the youth are not given resources. And Ghanaian youth do not lack talent. We have the talent already. What Ghanaian youth are looking for and other African youth are looking for is scalability and growth. Most of the time, if you are by the roadside, you see the beautiful talent that are displayed by the young people, but they don't have the financing, they don't have the tools to do their business. So their SMEs, 20 years time, they are still at the base. But somebody in Europe is just a business today, the next 1 year, the business become a global business and there's a lot of revenue. So we should also look at a way of empowering the young people so that they become busy. Once they become busy, they forget about this issue of fighting and forming groups to disturb the country and communities. Thank you.
Thank you for a very informative talk. So I'm a researcher on these sorts of issues and I find it very interesting. My question is related to the appointment of the Special Envoy to the Sahel. I would like to know whether you think this is in fact the right approach to engage in the Sahel for Ghana and for the region. We saw at the last ECOWAS summit that the authority strongly recommended that its members do not engage the AES on a sort of bilateral country-to-country level, fearing that maybe it undermines the bloc's ability to act unilaterally. With this in mind, I'd like to know what you think about the appointment of the Special Envoy and whether you think it might bring about a kind of every man for himself attitude towards cooperating with the AES and what that does for ECOWAS in the long term. Thank you.
Yes, so now you can answer us, and then after that we move on another round of questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to begin with Ransford talked about. He asked about 3 questions. And the first question was in reference to ECOWAS, this restoration or joint restoration of ECOWAS's authority or rule in Niger, if I get your question right. Francis, is that your question? Ransford, is that your question? The question was about ECOWAS having a joint restoration of democracy. Bazoum, when Bazoum was overthrown in Niger, ECOWAS struggled to restore Bazoum. The question is, could they have helped ECOWAS restore its authority? Is that what you mean?
Yes, what I'm saying is that when I think the coup happened in Niger,
Yes.
right? Nigeria, through Tinubu, wanted to galvanize ECOWAS to intervene in Niger, right? And I'm asking that if it had happened, do you think that would have sent a strong signal that ECOWAS is actually in control?
Of course, it was very obvious. It was very obvious because it came at a time almost immediately after 2 successful coup situations had happened with Mali. And before, Mali had had a coup at the time. And I remember very clearly, my team and I were in Dakar, in Senegal, on the day ECOWAS through Tinubu had sent a delegation to Niger. We have a technology that allows us to track. You can track aircraft. You can track aircraft movement from where and the destination, everything. So we saw the movement of the aircraft from Nigeria to Niger, and we're not allowed to land. They had to send it back. There was a struggle. ECOWAS was fighting for its soul because ECOWAS had been discredited for its inability to take control of regional security. And so they didn't want that to continue to further undermine ECOWAS. And so that clearly would have been the outcome. The goal was to ensure that they put an end, a stop to it, by ensuring that ECOWAS is in charge of regional security. You saw that they consistently insisted that Bazoum be restored as the legitimate leader of the people, even when everything showed clearly that this was not going to happen. But they also did that because they had seen or felt that ECOWAS was not in control of security, and that ECOWAS could not. The narrative was that ECOWAS was not acting in the interests of these countries. ECOWAS was seen as being the puppet of the West, implementing programs that only benefit the West. And so it was too late for ECOWAS to have done anything, and that's what clearly you saw, that ECOWAS couldn't do much about the situation. In spite of the blockade, in spite of the sanctions and all the things, measures they took, the coup still stood. You talk about the fact that the Ghanaian people have made peace with democracy. It's true, consistently, the data, especially by the Afro-Barometer Index, shows that we still have a significant love and support for democracy. But in many ways, we're seeing a decline in terms of support for democracy. Even though we still have more support for democracy than any type of government. How is that different in terms of the governance space here? What makes that different from these other countries? If you look at the entire West Africa, of all 15 countries in West Africa, Ghana is the only country that has had this long period of political stability. For more than 40 years without a coup. The only other nation that compares is Senegal. All the other countries, either they are riddled with coups or instability of some form or violent extremism. Ghana is the only country that has built a consistent culture of political changes, transitions between, even if it's just two political parties. We built a very vibrant media. People love to talk. This is one of the simple biggest things people love. That's a repeal of the criminal libel law that the doc mentioned. People cherish it. I'm telling you, it's impossible to bring it back. They will cause chaos in this country. But people love it. In some countries, you can't. I had a friend who talked about her experience in Gambia at some point. She just received a call that says that the demand has made the dollar seem worse than before. I'm telling you, in 2 hours, there were security men at her door to arrest her. Because the servant had informed somebody. Here, I mean, you can't imagine that you can say anything to anybody. Of course, once it doesn't bother, I mean, it doesn't, relate to the family. And so we love it. Our democracy is different. We are lucky. This is the only nation here, post-independence, who've never had a civil war. Look at all the other countries. And so we are lucky to have a space long enough to build anything we wanted. And that's why many people believe that if there's any nation within West Africa that can walk out of poverty into prosperity faster than any nation, it is Ghana. We don't have any reason why we are where we are. And so we are very different. Of course, we are not claiming any superiority that we are anything significantly extraordinary, but we are different. All the other West African nations, their story is very different. And that's why we cherish or should love our state. You talked about the theories of substantive democracy, and liberal democracy. That also focuses on increasing national control of resources. And this is continues to be an argument in terms of ownership and control of resources. Where are you leaning, either left-leaning or right-leaning government? And I can tell you, I think just yesterday we were having that conversation in the office about whether left-leaning or right-leaning governments are the most suitable in our context. Who manages our resources better? Is it the state acting as a lead agency for the ownership and management and distribution of resources? Maybe 50, 60 years ago, it was the right thing. Socialist oriented to take care of the people with the understanding that you're in a better position to do so. Today we have shifted significantly towards the middle. That states need to function in ways that citizens cannot in terms of provision of services. Certain key services states are properly structured to deliver. And for the rest of other things, they act, theorists tell us that they act like watchmen, watching over the citizens to live out their lives and their dreams. Maybe that's the ideal thing, even though it looks more capitalist. People like freedom, they like to own and create money, use well the way they deem it. They don't want the state to be telling them what to do with their lives, telling you how much food you should eat, telling you where to travel, where not to. And so I think it's something we will continue to debate or talk about depending on your context. Ambassador talked about some. I think it's out. Yes. Yeah. So some talked about the Special Envoy's office. And I'm not sure whether everybody heard him well. So the Special Envoy's office is meant to mend the relations between Ghana and the Sahelian states, and also mend the relationship between ECOWAS and the Sahelian states. But primarily between Ghana and Sahel. Those who have been following, they know that 2 years ago, Ghana's relationship with the Sahel was very poor. In fact, we had a huge diplomatic, rift. And it added on to pre-existing challenges we had with them. Those who know this, they know that Accra Initiative has been dysfunctional because of lack of trust. They would not share intelligence with us, they would not do much with us. But that Accra Initiative was seen as, an initiative that's only influenced by Western powers with whom they do not see eye to eye. So, and many other factors. And so today, ECOWAS's wish is that, or ECOWAS asks that, we do not have bilaterals with Alliance of Sahelian States, because that undermines ECOWAS's own protocols. So what should we do? I think the realistic thing is that this Alliance of Sahelian States have come to stay. In fact, just days ago, there are foreign missions or foreign officers that gone to the United Nations to ask for recognition of the Alliance of Sahelian States within the United Nations framework to be recognized as a legitimate regional bloc. ECOWAS is very late. And so we have to be very realistic. Beyond that, nations can have their own relations with the Alliance of Sahelian States, without necessarily ECOWAS getting involved. But what I can see is that realistically, it has come to stay. And ECOWAS only needs to re-engineer itself, and gear itself to accept the reality. We may want to look back at the past with some regrets that we have failed. ECOWAS has failed to deal with certain situations. That's why we are where we are. And we can, create a new, a new beginning in terms of dealing with the crisis and regional stability. Now that Ambassador has come, your question was about the point I made about government is a problem. The government is a solution. Isn't that true? That in our context here, our government is a problem and the solution at the same time. So for terrorist groups and young people who join terrorist groups, the narrative for them is that they know and believe that government is their problem. That's why they joined it. And they also know that government is a solution if they're willing to provide it. But whoever provides the solution is their government. So terrorist groups, and our director mentioned in the beginning, they are very exploitative. They take advantage of vulnerable young people. So terrorist groups are very intentional by exploiting the vulnerabilities in our society. Women's groups, they provide them with small loans. They drill boreholes. They provide social amenities. And they get intelligence, they get information. In some areas, they impose taxes and make them see that they are there for them. And so that's their government. Whoever provides the solution is their government. In our context, there is the same kind of thing. There are people who have created mini governments for themselves. There are business people who have their own government apart from the government that we all know. Yes, if you want something on the structure, there's somebody who calls. If you want something on Waterworks, there's somebody who calls. It's not the state. They don't do on official basis. They have sent these people across and they answer to him. That's their government. So it functions like that. You talk about how institutions can help solve the problem, rather the question, right? Yeah, the role of institutions. If some of the problems we have is a function of dysfunctional institutions. We all know there are many institutions that we all know that they are not delivering, and it's a source of frustration. And we want states to be sustainable. You have to tool institutions that are functional, that are responsive to social needs, and foundations that allow young people or people to realize their aspiration. Years ago, Obama came here and said something like, we don't need strong men, we need strong institutions. Many people's interpretation of that meant that we need institutions that are strong. But what does that mean when we say institutions are strong? There are processes and systems. Most institutions have processes and systems. But the processes and systems are undermined because we do not have strong men willing to hold the line. So, in my understanding of what he said was what it is, I do not agree with Obama's point that we need strong men, strong institutions, not strong men. Institutions are as strong as the men who lead them. Institutions are as strong as the men who lead them. If leaders are weak, leaders who lead people are weak, they weaken institutions. Because everyone around them would act safe, and they undermine processes and systems.
Perhaps he was referring to the procedural security, the institutional procedure security, the structure that lays down.
I like to listen.
Yes, Prof. Perhaps, in my understanding, he was referring to the procedural security that actually strengthens those institutions, that the individual, either weak or strong, gets in there, gets controlled by the system. And the system being controlled means that the procedural security will actually be
Who is the system? There's somebody who must hold the line.
Yes. So, someone to hold the line is the law that actually outlines how things are done. For example, we have breached the procedure security in recruitment into our security sectors. And that is why we are seeing a whole lot of issues that we are seeing today with regard to our security sector. In the past, it was difficult for you to see a military man being subverted by civilian. Today, we have seen military personnel being subverted and in some cases killed by civilians. Why? Not because that particular institution has weakened its strength, but the individual in the uniform who represents that symbol does not actually understand certain things that even controls his own principles in that uniform. And that leads to the breach. Take a case of the Ashama case. We have other incidents. The Ashama case was a murder case, right? We have the incident of Kaswa where these military men were begging, crying, begging. So it's all because of the procedure security. And the fact is that we no longer follow the procedure that the military used to follow to recruit people. Now it's about political activism. In fact, I didn't want to take much of the time. That's why I have to cut the conversation, because the polarization of the system was the matter. So I believe that when Obama was talking about that strong institutions, he was referring to establishing institutions that are being controlled by legal systems where the procedure security will be respected and followed. That either if you are a weak person or a strong person, when you get in there, it is not about what you think to do, it's about what the system outlines for you to follow.
Yeah, I think I've exhausted my question, but I still want to see it as an inconclusive debate or conversation. Because what this issue, I've debated this with people many times. So we look at our former Auditor General, Yadamino. Would you consider him as a strong man?
In which case?
As a leader, as an Auditor General.
So in my
it shouldn't be a two-way conversation. Let's have others share their views also.
Thank you very much. About this strong institutions and strong men, I think the explanation given by the Executive Secretary of Western, I concur with him because, see, there are institutions in this country where people, you see the boss of that institution, and people are hiding because they don't want to be seen to be like they are lazy or they are not doing their work. But there are other institutions where nobody cares. That is the strong-hearted people that the Executive Secretary was talking about here. So that's just the clarification I want to make. Thank you very much.
I see that as a literal. Thank you so much, and I think I like the discourse, but I see that aspect as a literal understanding or interpretation of that. Now, excuse me, it's interrupting my conversation. Now, the argument I'm making with regards to this, I'm not disputing your argument, neither am I disputing the executive director's argument, but I think to add more spices to that, the argument of an individual who is a strong person becomes a literal in my understanding with regards to the statement we are analyzing. Right. But then the institutional structure, when it is there, and the individual coming to occupy the seat knows that when you don't do your work as an executive director, there is something that will come after you. By that time, they feel automatically by the procedure secretary I put in quote, it's already been shaped to do his work. And on that note, you'll be able to supervise whoever is supposed to do the needful to follow the procedure that has been laid out for all of them. I'll give you a very good example. The Small Arms Commission, where I currently work, Adam Bonner came to succeed a porous, in fact, the most disgusting commission ever in this country. And why was it so? Whoever comes there as a political appointee comes to make money and go. And whatever happens to individuals coming to work, I'm coming. Whatever happens to an individuals, either they come to work, either they leave at work. Whatever happens, they don't care about that. But Bonner comes to succeed the institution. Listen to me. And says that they have awakened the constitutional mandate of the commission. That even he, as an executive officer, when he goes contrary to the law, the president says that he should be held accountable, irrespective of the fact that he's the one who appoints him as an appointee. As we speak now, if you go to Commission of Small Arms and Light Weapons, if you have ever been there before, you will notice that things have been done in a standard form. It's not an issue of the individual. It's an issue about the institutions. Now, who watches the watchman becomes the question here. That we have the procedure security, we have the structure there, but no one follows the structure because any other person who should supervise the person is there to supervise the one who is breaching the law or who is going contrary to the procedure. And that is where it happens. So as an individual who is a strong person, it's literal. And the biggest challenge that actually brings about this debate here is the issue of polarization. Director, you remember we discussed this many years ago, somewhere 2019, we spoke about this issue of politicization. And Ghana's biggest challenge is the issue of politicization. We have politicized the system, even to a point that our traditional issues becomes another point. Look, when you were making the presentation, I trust me, the lecture was, in a long time, I haven't gotten such lecture. But you see, there was a point I raised, I noted here. Issue of legality and traditional authority. Tell me in Ghana today, our laws have weakened even the traditional authorities. Yet, the traditional authority existed upon which the British colony came to establish their authority. Because we have legal structures which existed, and they took advantage of the structure, and it worked for them. Is that not the case? Then, when we became independent, right? Now, the Ghana Constitution recognizes the traditional authorities. But somewhere along the line, the Constitution gives them the power to operate, and somewhere takes off the power from them. Where do we stand? Double stands, discrepancies in political in issues of that, and you see, the politicization is what leads to all of this. Look, if you go to Ashanti region in recent times, there was a case in Ashanti region, right, where a gentleman sat on a radio station and spoke ill to the Ashanti authority, and the station was closed in the name of democracy, in the name of media freedom. We came out with loud mouths on social media, calling the head of Ashanti, Otumfuo, and what have you. He doesn't have the power to do that. We are living in democracy. Yet he rules his territory. You don't know how he rules the territory. So the tradition, the issue here is about the procedural security. As soon as we breaches that, and we allow the politicization to take over almost everything, these security issues, the incidents that we are seeing, it's nowhere it will live. So Obama was not referring to the strong man as an individual. He was looking at the institution that can direct the people to do the work.
Okay, thank you. So we'll take one more. Is it a comment or a question?
I really wanted to put what Executive has said in a, will I say, practical reality for us to understand in summary. Because whatever you see, I was putting down, because if I look at the theme, it's what can Ghana do?
Yes, but before you, and I'll allow you, one of the things Executive Director mentioned was the fact that one of the drivers of the instability was youth frustration, right? And I'm very happy to see a couple of youth here, and I hope you've been thinking about it, but I want to hear your voices, right? Because when you look at the instability issue, most of the targeted audience, in the Executive Director is true, are the young folks, right? They don't use 50-year-old men shooting, you know, and claiming territories, right? It's the young folks. So I'm very glad you're here. You've been educated, but we want to hear your voices too. So please, if you have questions, we want to hear at least two, and we'll wrap up very soon. So, sir, you introduce yourself and then you go ahead.
Okay, my name is Yusuf Ali. I'm a criminologist by training at the same time as lawyer. So I can wear the two hats, one at the right, one at the left. Thank God I'm sitting close to my boss. I've done two weeks here. Critically, based on the questions asked, I wanted to just add up and clarify certain issues. Chief Executive has mentioned a lot of things which are so silent to some of us. But the truth remains, the problems within the region are all similar and same. Because Chief has know that he has been sending me to Nigeria to the heartbeats where Boko Haram is happening, how it started. Some of us can sit down here and give an analysis of what is going on. So, looking at all that, whatever he has mentioned there is just a summary of what is going on. So I believe this platform is one, as you said earlier, so small. We're looking at the timing, looking at the participants. We want, like, if it could have been in a more larger scale so that it can go a very long way. So those who really dwell in intelligence will be able to work with the information we are going to share. Okay, I just want to look at it this week. Out of the trends or factors that are contributing this over-militarization, what do we do? We have to lessen that, right? How do we do that? When you look at all border towns within the region, you find a man or family in the other side of the border, sharing family in the other side of the border. I give you an example. When you go to the Volta region, half of the family are in Ghana, half of the family are in Togo, right? It is only when they are threatened security-wise from the other side of the border, what do? They look for refuge back to the Ghana side. How do you sort out? First and foremost, these people who come to raise issues of insecurity are not people from the heavens. They are people, right? They are not aliens. And in those communities, if you go down to the people, they can be able to tell you, these are these, this is this, this is this. Now, instead of over-militarizing the whole affairs, why won't us come with policies that allow the locals now discuss these issues with those who are against the policies of government? We all know the economic side of it. The youth, we lack something doing. Ambassador has just mentioned something. The people in his own area, because they are now engaged in Okada riding, they find a way of making money for themselves. Now they have something at stake. If they allow the system to break down, they also have something to lose. But if at the end of the day I know I don't have anything to lose, I all lose. I don't care. I don't know whether I'm making sense out of it. So every youth, as long as you engage him and he knows that out of this, I'm going to make penny out of it, definitely he will put all his efforts to ensure that that thing is protected and safe. I hope I'm making sense. Good. You asked a question on the issue of ECOWAS joint task force trying to attack Nigeria. I remember during the period, my boss is in Senegal, right? And I was in Nigeria at the time. When the flight went, it was refused landing, right? And he has to go back. But do you know, within 4 hours, another flight went and it was allowed to land. Who are they? They are the local chiefs of Nigeria. If I could remember, Sanusi was part of the entourage. Who is a local? He is not a military. He is not coming for. And the people or the who protest them allow him to land and listen to him. But what Tinubu earlier did was to show the military might, trying to send forces, and they said, okay, come, let's fight. But when the locals, like the chiefs went, the people listened because they told them, oh, the Nigerians and the Nigerians were all one. The Bazoum you are holding on, please don't do anything stupid with this man. Don't kill him. When you do, you are going to cause a lot of pain, a lot of that, and problems will come. And they were able or willing to listen. But compared to the military, oh, you are coming to fight us in our church, oh, we are ready to do that. So the same thing when you look at the local insecurity.
I just want to say that there was advocate here. Remember the issue with Benin?
Yes. Okay, that's a different thing entirely and later on, right? When the coup also took over and then the military have to go in quickly to get, okay, fine. If you see that as, will I say, a plus for the military, yes, we agree. But the question is, when you look at the issue of insecurity, it's also have to do with the issue of idea. That people's thoughts are being, how would I say, brainwashed to something else. Because on a normal day, you and I, nobody wants to come and have issues with his own brother, right? So why would I raise an arm against my own fellow brother? Unless something is going in my head differently that I think you are wrong. And the only way to sort that out is when we engage in dialogue. I think that's, yes, I hope I'm making sense. When you engage in dialogue, you now know, oh, the way you see it, if I stand here and look at it 6, while God will see it as what? 9. Is that not the difference? So when he turns the position and come up to my own side of the thing, he will see it as 6, while I see no. So we now agree that, oh, depending on the side where you are standing, that's where you see. So I look at it to say that, okay, fine. If we really, like, what Ghana would have to, like, do is to look at it holistically and look at the mitigating factors by providing solutions to some of these factors. I give example. You mentioned that in the north, most of the companies, foreign investors, they don't want to go to the north. Why? They feel the insecurity issues can quickly spread. So what happens to the youth over there? So we have to continue allowing them to rush back to Accra. If they do, what happens to the resources in Accra? Another population, congestion, and other things, right? And remember, the more you have more congestion, population density in a place, what happens? Another, yes, we will now have to start all over again. So, and I think the issue of substantive and liberal democracy has been a debate piece, which you know, you're a scholar, that's why you're bringing that. So don't engage you later. So yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So do we have a youth question?
Yes.
No, you are not a youth. You and I are not a youth.
How many youth?
You are not a youth.
Oh.
So we have one youth because we promised to leave here at 8:30. Okay. And I aim for us to leave here at 8:30. And there are two important items we have to do. So 1, 2, and then baby if we have time. And baby's friend. If we have time. So we'll hear from the two gentlemen. Because it's important to hear the voices of the youth in this important discussion.
So I'm Reginald. So my question is simple. When you talk about terrorism, our minds comes to the military intervention to bring peace. So the question is, beyond military responses, what should Ghana and other West African countries be doing to address economic and social conditions that make young people vulnerable to violent extremism?
Thank you. And then we will take the second one. So follow us with the question. Are you ready? If you're not ready, it's fine. You're not ready. Okay. So, Mr. Speaker.
Okay.
Please answer Beverly. Okay, let's give Beverly. Beverly.
Okay. The last statement, the last gentleman made a very good summation. You made a summation that the military were not allowed to land, but the locals were allowed to land. So meaning that it's mechanism. The mechanism you use to address an issue also has a critical role to play to solve that problem. If you are solving an issue with force will be resisted. But if you have solving an issue with dialogue, bringing both parties together to brainstorm, to identify the central issue the two parties are fighting over, then there will be tranquility. To talk of strong institutions, I believe that when there's strong institution, the strong men can lead. In the sense that when the strong institution is there, when the strong men leave, the institution can survive. In the sense that the strong men hold the strong institution to strive, whereby they lay a foundation. It's like building a house. If you, the one building a house, you don't buy the right materials to build a house, and you lay the blocks on it, and you believe that you have built a house, where the wind blows, that is when you realize that the material was right or wrong. So it is with institutions. If the institutions are strong and the men in there are strong, they can lead the institution with bold chest that I have left a strong institution that whoever comes in can hold the institution to accountability. And that is where the strong men make sure that whoever is in there understand the system and complies with it, and ensure that even in his absence, the institution can run without him or her. But not when he is there, that is the institution where when it's not there, it collapses. So I believe it is a matter of understanding and the mechanism we want to use. What system do we want to use? What is the problem? What is the channel? Who are the solutions? Who are the people who benefit from the solutions? And how do we cements everything. When it comes to the youth, I have a little clue with our young people. I'm also a young person. Yes. Now we really want quick income. The Jay-Z's, which I'm one. When you go out there, go to X, go to Facebook, you will see what I'm talking about. We don't understand what social media is. We put most of our life on social media, which security-wise, it is not appropriate. And that is where the politicians also go to take those information. And they said, politicians don't need to, they exploit. So they look out for young people who they believe that if they entice them with what they are demanding for on the surface, they can get them. But if you get a politician, if you get a young person, I work with the politicians a lot. Politicians don't like young people who can brainstorm. They see you as a threat to them. It's just a few who call you in to learn from you and also train you. But most politicians want young people they can point with and use. So if the young people are sharp enough and intellectual and know that this is what I want, and I can engage you on issues, but not on material things, trust me, we can put the politicians accountable. But the right that with the young people, we want the easy line. So to provide for you, we're going to let you very soon. Trust me, they will take the rights and everything. You see the young person. But if a young person is able to demand issues, then the politician will go back to the drawing board and bring the solution to the young people.
Thank you, young man, very please. So, Mr. Moni, you want to address the young man?
Yes.
Who has your mic?
So
the blue.
You promised you were going to allow you.
All right.
No, I'm speaking for you.
All right. So, terrorism, not surprisingly, is a very new threat to many young people. Many young people are engaged on these issues. Like you mentioned, the Gen Zs and the millennials. It's about business, about youth, entertainment, security, technology, and stuff like that. So terrorism, you talk about the military. When you think about terrorism, you think about the military. It's true. The military is set up to protect the nation, the territorial integrity of the nation, which means that the entire territory, demarcated lands of Ghana, they are in charge of protecting it. So if there's anyone who seeks to threaten our security from external sources, they are directly in charge, in the forefront when it comes to the context of war. Terrorists, part of what they're looking to do is to delegitimize the state or undermine the state. So the military, they are in charge of doing things like that. But terrorism is more complex than that. It's more nuanced than that. Those of us who are looking at security, all of us here, when you talk about terrorism in terms of responses, people think about borders because we see it as an external threat. And in security, our measures in terms of the responding to security is informed by our perception of the threat. So our perception is that terrorism is coming from external sources. So we focus on borders, which means immigration, the military, and all of that. But the reality goes beyond that. There are situations where people are radicalized within mainland or mainstream society in inner cities. In this country, the first person who left Ghana to join terrorist groups, he was not from a border community, he's from Accra here. There are several others that we have worked with. They didn't come from border communities, they're from Accra here. They left to join terrorism outside of Ghana, which means that there are internal factors too. When at the point when military is engaged, it's meant to engage one for deterrence. Military engaged for deterrence and then also to maintain territorial control, but it doesn't solve the problem. So you need to look at what are the factors that lead people to become radicalized, to join terrorist groups. What are the factors that lead people's mindset to see terrorist violence as a legitimate call for them? So that's why we're talking about youth vulnerabilities, unemployment, inequality, marginalization, poverty, and several other factors. And they don't just live in only in borders, even in mainstream society, inner cities, they live there. So that's why we need to do more on governance, development, providing young people with job opportunities, allowing media freedom, people to say what they want to say without undermining another person or hurting other people. Create environment for you to sit in your room, create a business. You can get a degree in your room, you can get a PhD in your room, you can design the best, fashion what are in your room. States have a hand in doing that, providing those kinds of opportunities. Lastly, the second biggest PVA, we call it PVA, preventing violent extremism intervention, is part of terrorism. It's an element of terrorism. Let me keep it that way. Single biggest thing is by the World Bank. The World Bank gave Ghana money, $150 million, to address violent extremism or terrorism. It means we don't have terrorist attacks here, but it means address the factors that can lead people to involve in terrorism, which means that you have to construct roads. There are many parts of this country you go to and you wonder, is this Ghana? Today, people are going to the moon. Someone knows Elon Musk? People are going to the moon, and yet some of us, it's very difficult to get to our villages. Construct roads, build hospitals, build schools, provide water, and create small-scale businesses, empower them so they can live meaningfully economically. So that no terrorist group will come somewhere and attract them or lure them into it. And so that's going on in about 6 regions in northern Ghana. So those are the foundations you need to lay to ensure that terrorist groups do not exploit them to engage in terrorism. I think it's the best I can do at this level to explain.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have the last question from Ayu here. Mention your name and where you're joining us from, and then we will go to the next item. Is it on?
Thank you very much. My name is Brian, and I'm joining you from Instability. And my main question for tonight's agenda will be how close or threatening the situation at hand is. And then also, we spoke about implementing various measures, like the Accra Initiative. And then if we need to implement this measure as soon as possible, terrorism, wouldn't the military approach be best suitable than the long-term approach, such as the Accra Initiative, which works on the mindset of individuals? And then also, I was very interested when we spoke about strong or weak institutions, not to dispute anyone's arguments, but even when institutional structure is laid out, it depends on how strong or weak the person is. I'm speaking from experience. I'm engineers in alcohol campus, and then our administration is run by the various executives. So it will depend. We have a constitution governing the whole in general, but how strong or weak the president is depends on how the administration is going to be run. And then he said something about politicization, being able to have an external audit board to check on the current people running the institution. And then this is a situation where those in power actually select the people of their own to monitor them. So where is the fairness? But my main question for tonight's agenda was how close or threatening the situation at hand is, and then how we are implementing these measures.
Thank you very much. I like your questions. So the question is, how threatened is Ghana? To begin with, we are closer to terrorism than at any point in our history. I'm not saying we'll be attacked tonight or tomorrow morning, but the threat is closer to Ghana than it has ever been. Like I tried to show in the graphs where we were in 2013 and where we are now. So that's geographical proximity. The attacks are increasing and expanding towards us. So it's closer to us now than it has ever been. There's a village called B2. It's one of the, and I think my brother here will know, B2 is very close to our border in the Upper East region, but it's on the side of the border with Burkina Faso. There have been many attacks in there. There are two main refugee camps in northern Ghana. One in Upper East, one in Upper West. There are other, stuff. And we're not talking about 100 people or 500 people. There are thousands of people who are coming into this space seeking refuge. And they are there, they are still there. There are refugee camps here. We're not sure about everyone's intention here, who is here. Our trade routes have been impacted by terrorism, the trade between us and these countries. And a couple of months back, our tomato traders were part of the casualties. Beyond the geographical proximity, there are people in this country who have joined terrorist groups. Some things I can't say them well, some things I can. And those I can't is that there are at least 13 people who have left Ghana to join terrorist groups. And some of them from here, Accra here. Some of them from your school, sorry to say, from the University of Ghana. They went to the University of Ghana. And I'll say that K University also has had some before. So it means that we have been exposed to terrorism than we have ever been. What do we do? What measures can we develop or devise to prevent terrorism from happening here? So the military response is important. When you go up north, you see a lot of things. But sometimes you see them if you are not looking for them. If you are, depending on your side, if you're looking for something, you see it. Those of us who work in security will see things. If you go up north, you see a lot of things. Militarized things and the border communities, many things are going on. Sometimes it's helpful to say it so people know. Sometimes it's not helpful because when you say it, some people may get scared or may exaggerate it elsewhere. But there are many things government is doing, both at the borders and away from the borders, to contain it. And there's no nation that can say that they are adequately prepared to deal with terrorism. When you do that at the leadership level, is to show force and politically to project yourself as powerful. But in reality, nobody can say, even the US can't say that. Because we see the US, no nation has defeated terrorism in the context of defeat. Once it happens, you are in trouble. So Ghana is very, very well prepared in terms of the things that we think it should be doing. Like I mentioned, the framework, they have the framework, there are joint border patrol activities and exercises that are going on. And it's a process. You can't say at one and this is I'm adding, no, it's a process. You keep building and keep looking at your vulnerabilities and your strength. But so far, Ghana is a good example of how to deal with our own issues. Yes.
Thank you so much. A round of applause for all of us, especially for our speaker once again. It's been a very great conversation. So, Doug, you were saying that we need a bigger platform, and you're very right. But what you don't know is that NYASA is a very young institution. In fact, we started in May this year. And so we're taking baby steps now. And the idea is to grow the brand and the institution to the point where we can have bigger platforms for conversation. We have, and this is our third dialogue for those of us who are joining us for the first time since May that we started. And I guess this room is so small, like you said, to discuss the issue of instability across the Sahel. So on the 18th of September, we have another event that will continue with the conversation. I'm very happy to see that we have different minds, bringing different perspectives. So this is an open invitation to you, even before you start seeing our communication on the next event. It's on the 18th, it's still on the Sahel, because there are so many dimensions to it, and we have to talk about it. So to help us as an institution, like I mentioned, we're very young, and your feedback is very, very important for us. So we have the feedback. We're going to just take a survey, 10 minutes quickly. We have a feedback QR code on the tables in front of you, and we will ask that you kindly scan it. Let's use the next 10 minutes to share this important feedback with us. We want to get better with our events. we want to take your perspectives and feed it into our next program. So please, our ladies are around, our team is around. If you're having challenges, just let us know. But it's very friendly questions. Just quickly answer it, and then we can continue with the event. We are just wrapping up, so let's dedicate 5 to 10 minutes to this feedback survey, very important for us, and then we take it from here. Thank you very much.
Can I say something privately?
Yes.
Thank you very much. It's on, I want to make a comment on strong institutions or strong men. I want to take it from a different perspective and give 2 examples and give the conversation for everyone to think about it. If you ask me whether strong institution, the strong institution, who builds the institution? Because institution do not descend from the skies, it's a human being. So who is that human being who bring them? Who will build that strong institution? Example, I'm a village boy. Before the PSHS came, we had cocoa scholarship for cocoa farmers' children. We have many scholarships in Ghana, but cocoa scholarship was for people who have cocoa farms. And when their boys are going to secondary school, they go to cocoa board offices and take the scholarship for their children. My father had a cocoa farm, my mom had a cocoa farm. But when I was going to secondary school, I never had it. You go to the office, they will tell you in 3 forms as a forms as the forms they are talking about is if or she that you have your name, the farmer, and the son or daughter who is going to secondary school. What makes the form get finished is that somebody is in Accra here, his son or his nephew is going to secondary school, but because he's in cocoa board office, he will give the scholarship. So when you are in the village and you go to the district, by the time you get there, you never had a form. My father had to take a loan for me to go to secondary school. Meanwhile, that particular scholarship is monies that are deducted from cocoa farmers' money. So when you are going to sell your cocoa to Ghana government, they take a percentage that they will give it to you in form of scholarship. Meanwhile, others who do not have cocoa farms take the scholarship against the child who is coming from the village. What happens is because of mindset. So what the question I want to ask is, which mindset do we take to offices? Whatever office that somebody has been positioned there, which office do they take to? The last example is SRC elections and SRC activities in our universities. Why is it that politicians have taken interest in it? Anytime there's SRC elections in our universities, you see big politicians backing it. And you get 2 institutions, MPP and NDC. And if you have been monitoring, most of the time, after these students complete student leadership who are into SRC, they either migrate to MPP or NDC. And when they come into power, SRC, like our brother was saying, the moment students get SRC president, this executive, this, they start buying cars, they start building estate houses in school, whilst their fellow students who also pay the SRC dues do not benefit. And the moment they complete school, these guys, because they have the power from school, they were able to speak, they were able to talk, they are taught by this our political leaders. So some of them do not even work. They had a position in the school, they will enjoy that position. The moment they complete university, they are absorbed into political party, they are never work. 3 years, 4 years, you see them in big cars, while their fellow students are also suffering. So when the other ones do not get the opportunity, they are paid as they never get anything. Then it forces them to do things that are illegal. That is where most of the time hear statements now the youth nowadays want quick money. Yes. It's because of what they see from their fellow students, from the big guys who have the resources that they are not sharing. Okay. So we have to tackle our mindset from the childhood, from anybody in the country, so that when the person gets to the office, he goes there with a positive mindset, a mindset that he wants to share with everybody in Ghana, but not only his pocket or only his family or his personal interest. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. And I'd like to think that some of us have been able to scrap the code. I know some are also having issues, but We will share the QR code link with those of us who attended because we have your telephone numbers. So we'll share the link. So for those of you who are able to scan to, take the survey, we'll share it with you. So on that note, two things. We will come up here for a group photo, and then after the group photo, we'll call it a night. But before that, just a quick closing remark. So on behalf of the Nyansa Institute for Strategic Dialogue, I'd like to thank our speaker, Mr. Mutari Mooney, for sharing his experience, insights, and candid reflections with us this evening. Thank you also to everyone, all of you here, who joined us, especially the young professionals and who have contributed to this evening's conversation. The purpose of Nyansa is not simply to hold conversations, but is to create space for research, for dialogue, and for very candid reflections like we've had this evening. And so I hope tonight's discussion has given us not only more questions, but also a clearer sense of the questions we need to keep asking and the actions we need to consider. So on that note, thank you and a big round of applause to yourselves for honoring our invitation. And we'll quickly ask all of us to gather here for a quick group photo, and we'll call it a night. Thank you very much. So if we have our media team, we are ready for our group photo. Ladies and gentlemen, please come up here with me for a quick photo, and then we call it a night.